but just go ahead and get into this. We're going to talk about critical thinking skills. Kind of a lost art in our education system today, how to do critical thinking. But we're going to do critical thinking skills that actually disarm evolutionists. Now, as you walked in, you saw a lot of resources out there. Those are not from us. Those are from your local creation group. We do have a little table back there, the brown table, that has some information about the classes we actually teach. We do several one-day classes. We do a 5-day class. So if you want to find out some more about that, pick up some of those sheets there. Now, having been in education for many, many years, we'll probably have a few quizzes here tonight. And I have rules for my quizzes. If you don't get 100%, you fail. And also, having been a captain in the United States Marine Corps, if you fail, you're doing push-ups. How many wish they didn't come tonight? Okay. All right, let's talk about evolution. What are we being taught about evolution in the public schools? Well, here's a biology textbook. Today, nearly all biologists acknowledge that evolution is a fact. Notice they call evolution a fact here. Here's our National Academy of Sciences. Is evolution a theory or fact? It is both. So we need to challenge that tonight. Is that just a made-up statement to intimidate people, or is evolution really a fact? So we're going to challenge that Goliath called evolutionism tonight. Common evolutionist tactics. Bluffing. We all know, we're over millions of years. Do you know over millions of years is not a fact? That is a big bluff. What it basically teaches, anytime somebody says over millions of years, what they're really telling you is this. They don't have the observable evidence. That's all that really means. Doesn't talk about facts. Grades. Only evolution answers are allowed. All opposition is disallowed. That's what's happening in our school systems. In other words, any science that opposes evolutionism is not allowed in our public schools. Intimidation techniques against our students. Discredit the Bible and creation. Discredit anyone who does not believe in evolution. It's called name calling. And establish the illusion of authority and facts. That's what our students are up against. And guess what? Our students can't handle this. Why not? We have all the tools we need. We have the Bible. We have all the science. Why can't our students answer these challenges? There's a major problem in Christian education today, including churches. So, critical thinking method. Let's get into this. Typical method, focus on the evidence. Well, I'm going to show you another tactic today. Instead of focusing so much on the evidence, let's focus on analyzing their statements. Take a close look at the words they're using. Make the non-believer accountable for his or her statements. I find this quite often when I go to the secular universities and do presentations, and I can't wait for the Q&A time because I know what they're going to do during the Q&A time. They want to destroy everything I said, including me. And I like that. Because you know what happens? We can usually answer most of their questions, but they cannot answer our questions when they're challenged back. That's why I like the Q&A time. So let's start with 3 critical thinking questions. When you're approached and you're challenged by an evolutionist, ask these 3 questions. Number 1, how do you know it's true? Now, I'm going to let you have a warning. I'm going to give you a warning here. You don't leave here tonight unless you have all 3 of these memorized. Of course, for each one you don't know, you can substitute 20 push-ups. Push-ups for me are the cure for everything. How do you know it's true? That will stop them. How do they know it's true with their statement? Well, I saw it on the internet, or my professor. That doesn't make something true. I've known a lot of professors that didn't know a lot of things. Has it ever been observed? Anybody here ever observed Darwinian evolution? No. Knows any evolutionist has never observed it either. No one's ever observed one creature changing into a completely new kind of creature. You know what we actually observed? Elephants produce elephants. Bacteria produce bacteria. And cats produce cats. That's what we actually observe. You know what that is? Created after their kinds. And they produce after their kind. And are you making any assumptions? So how do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed or making any assumptions? Can anybody give me all 3 of those right off? Anybody want to try all 3 of those? No, if you moved in the military, you volunteered. I saw a lot of people over here move. Now, I'll bet some of you already made an assumption. Some of you probably already made an assumption. How many were thinking you're not allowed to look up there and give me all three? And never said you couldn't look up there. See, you missed an opportunity to become brilliant. How you know it's true is it ever been observed or making assumptions? Let's take a look at some of these. Applying those three critical thinking questions. Here's the statement, textbook. Life originated in a pool of chemicals about 3.7 billion years ago. How did they know that's true? Nobody was there, were they? You know what that means? It's never been observed. You know what it also means? It's all based on assumptions, isn't it? What just happened to the fact of evolution? They don't have the facts. Three critical thinking questions. How you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? That statement right there can be shown to be nothing more than an assumption, not founded in any observational science. Incidentally, to be a fact of science, it has to be observable and repeatable. No one's ever done that with the origin of life. How about this one? Here's another biology textbook. Scientists do know that about 200 to 300 million years after the earth cooled enough to carry liquid water, cells similar to modern bacteria were common. How do they know that's true? No one was there. No one saw that, so it's not been observed. Are they making any assumptions? Yes, they are. Where are the facts of evolutionism? They're not there. It's a big bluff. Now, how do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? Those are three critical thinking questions. Now let me show you what I call a power question. A power question. I use this in debates all the time. Show me any observational evidence for evolution that does not require me to use faith. Did anybody here observe the Big Bang? Nope. Anybody here ever observe, anybody on this planet ever observe a star forming or a galaxy form? No, they didn't. Anybody ever observed one creature changing to a new creature? No, they haven't. Anybody ever observed the origin of life? No. Anybody observed the origin of dinosaurs? No, they haven't. Where are the facts of evolutionism? They're only in print in textbooks, not in science. So show me any observational evidence for evolution that does not require me to use faith. There are two key words in here. One is observational and the other one's faith. If you just remember those two words, you can wrap your words around this. These kind of statements will stop somebody and put an end to some of that intimidation and bluffing that's going on in our public education system. How do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? Then the power question. Show me any observational evidence for evolution that does not require me to use faith. So let's use the power question. Here's the statement. Life must be on other planets. It's arrogant to believe we are the only life in the universe. Wow, that's a pretty common statement against people who don't believe in life in outer space. Power question. Show me any observational evidence for life anywhere else in this universe that does not require me to use faith. They cannot do this. The whole idea of life elsewhere in this universe is nothing more than an assumption, not founded in any observational science at all. Over millions of years, mutations added new genetic information for all the diversity of life we see today. Hopefully no one's ever seen any of those creatures up there. Anybody seen any of those creatures? Power question. Show me any observational evidence for where that vast amount of information in our DNA came from that does not require me to use faith. The only answer I've ever gotten from the evolutionists is this. Over millions of years, folks, stop right there. No one's observed millions of years. That is a big bluff. What it basically means is they do not have the observable evidence to support their claim. That's all millions of years means. So evolution is not a fact, and it's not a scientific theory. Show me any observational evidence where that vast amount of information in our DNA came from that does not require me to use faith. Are you ready for your first pop quiz? Anybody fill in the two big words there? Observational? Faith. Very good. So far, that side is leading. Losers will do push-ups. That's just a given. Anybody know critical thinking question number 1? Go ahead. Okay, that's okay. That's pretty smart. How do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? Very good. This side is losing 2-0. I like competition. I'm very competitive. Now, words have meaning. Words have meaning. We've all learned that in English classes we were growing up. I'm going to show you how to read between the lines, how to recognize the big bluff, and show me the observable evidence. We're going to talk about fuzzy words and magic words. How many learned about fuzzy words and magic words in your English class? Nobody, okay. I didn't either. What are fuzzy words? They're words like this. We believe, we think, must have, could have, might have. Our opinion is we guess over millions of years. Now, what's so fuzzy about all those words? When somebody uses those words in a statement, what they're basically saying is we don't have the observable evidence. You know where I find all these words? High school textbooks. That's where I find these words, in high school textbooks. What it basically means is they do not have the observable evidence. Let's take a look at one. Here's a life science textbook, grade 7. Paleontologists think that Archaeopteryx in today's birds descended from some kind of reptile, possibly from a dinosaur. Now, Archaeopteryx is one of those famous transitional creatures from a dinosaur to a bird. It's supposed to be a feathered dinosaur. Let's look for the fuzzy words. How about think that? You know what that means? They're not sure, are they? They just think that is. How about some kind of? They're not even sure what kind of reptile this descended from. And here's the big scientific term, possibly. In other words, when you read this statement, look at those words, what do they really know? Nothing. Nothing at all. This is getting too easy now, isn't it? I was just recently visited this museum in Dallas, Texas, the Ross Perot Museum of Nature and Science. It is strictly there to promote evolutionism. And here's the statement I took right from the museum. Experiments with model protocells show how early life could have begun evolving. Protocells must grow quickly and reproduce most often after they contain genetic material that can copy itself. These protocells outcompete others. Now, what is a model protocell? I don't even know what a protocell is. How do they know anything such as that existed? They don't. So, how do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed, or do you make any assumptions about these protocells? They don't have a clue, folks. We found no such thing as a protocell. So then, what is a model protocell? It's a model based on some fictitious thing. How early life could have begun. What does that mean? They don't know. It just could have. And how about this last part? These protocells outcompete others. How did they know this, folks? This is supposed to have taken over 3 billion years ago. Was anybody there to see them outcompete anybody else? No. This whole phrase is nothing but a bunch of fuzziness, not facts or even theory. Joseph Silknow, astronomer, wrote a book called The Big Bang. He's a good astronomer. He's an evolutionist. Now, in this paragraph I'm going to read, he's going to talk about how galaxies form. Let me read this and see if we even understand what he's talking about. Imagine that infinitesimal fluctuations in density were present in the early universe. The expansion of the universe must have exerted a stabilizing influence in such irregularities. The expanding universe has the effect of greatly impeding what otherwise might have been catastrophic forces. Nevertheless, the process of growth of fluctuations went on for a very long time. How many understood that? Wow. Can anybody recognize the first fuzzy word here? Imagine. What does that tell you about the whole paragraph? It's nothing more than his imagination, not science. Let's look at some more. How about must have? He doesn't know, just must have in his words. Might have been, he's not sure there, and went on for a very long time. How does he know this? Nobody ever observed a galaxy form. So this whole statement is fuzziness, not science. Now, you ready for what I call the greatest fuzzy statement of all time? Richard Dawkins, the high priest of evolutionism. And here's his statement. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved, probably by some kind of Darwinian means, probably to a very high level of technology, and designed a form of life that they seeded into perhaps this planet. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer. Whoa. And he is considered to be one of the top evolutionist scientists. Well, let's look at the fuzzy words. It could be, he's not sure, some earlier time, he doesn't know, probably, some kind of, probably again, perhaps this planet, and I suppose it's possible, might find evidence, and you might find. There's more fuzzy words than there are words in this thing. And that's what's being passed off as evolutionism. That's why I put the ism on there. It is not science. Do not equate evolutionism with science. They are opposed to each other. Well, let's go to magic words. Now, we're not talking abracadabra here. Magic words. Appeared, emerged, arose, gave rise to, was on the way to becoming, burst onto the scene, evolved itself, was making a transition to. Now, what's so magic about these? They all talk about something that happened without producing any observable evidence to support the claim. Let's take a look at some. Devo, evolutionary development is what that stands for, proposes that genes involved in cobbling together flesh and bone during early growth were repurposed to develop new structures throughout evolution's history by combining their functions in new ways. The magic word there is repurposed. Can I give you a homework assignment, since this is education time here? Your homework assignment is this. Tonight, when you go home, repurpose yourself into another creature. How do you do that? There's no explanation for how that's done. Incidentally, if you're thinking mutations and natural selection, that will not work. On Saturday at a luncheon, I'm going to be doing a whole talk on our humans and apes cousins. Now, I only have to talk about a single fossil. I will show you that mutations do not add information, and there's no such thing as natural selection. It does not work the way we're being told. So that'll be Saturday at a luncheon. And if you want to know where that's going to be, Dr. Johnson here has all the information on that one. Going to be good food. Here's another one. Perot Museum again. In order to survive, living things have evolved sensory systems that are adapted to their specific environments and needs. In addition to seeing, hearing, touching, and smelling, organisms have evolved a fascinating range of ways to sense their environment. Some create pictures with their sound. Others detect heat or navigate with electricity. Living things have evolved sensory systems. You know, a sensory system is a very complex system. How did that happen? You know, there's no explanation, no observable evidence to support that claim right there. We find systems that have sensory systems. We find them that don't. But we don't find anything in between there. We don't find out how this could have happened. How about this whole last part here? Organisms have evolved a fascinating range of ways to sense their environment. How did that happen? Folks, if mutations do not add new genetic information, Darwin's dead right there. It means all the information you have inside you had to be pre-programmed by what? A creator God. That's exactly what you have in you. Pre-programmed information. All you are capable of doing is losing information or maintaining information, but not gaining any new information in your DNA. Some create pictures with their sound. That's a pretty sophisticated system. How did that happen? Well, Mike, over long periods of time, mutations and natural selection. That does not answer the question. How did that happen? All you're doing is bluffing your way through saying mutations and natural selection. We have not found, that I know of and other scientists know of, one single mutation that ever added new functional genetic information. Not one. We can recombine it, we can lose it, we can duplicate it, but we can't add to it. Around 230 million years ago, during the Triassic period, a new type of reptile emerged on the scene. Dinosaurs would rule the land for 130 million years. New type of reptile emerged. From where and how? Those aren't answered. See, they give the answer over millions of years, they evolved. How did they evolve? How many steps would that take? You know, for a dinosaur to go to a bird, it would take hundreds to thousands of new mutations that add information. On Saturday, I'm going to show that that's not even probable. Not even probable. So a big challenge. Now, let's get to a big challenge. Let's talk about the fossil record. Our youth are constantly being taught the fossil record proves evolutionism. As we're being taught. Fossil record proves evolutionism. True or false? Well, let's look at the fossil record. We have a critical thinking question. Anybody remember the 3 critical thinking questions? How do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? The power question, show me any observational evidence for evolution that does not require me to use faith. We're going to look at deception in textbooks. Not science, but deception. You're going to have another very crucial quiz talking about the Cambrian explosion in fossil graveyards. In other words, we're not going to have to look at fossils that much at all in here. In other words, what I like to do is train to do critical thinking and how to go after the foundations. That way you don't have to get into all the big science. Go after the foundations and critical thinking skills. So critical thinking question about fossils. How much of the fossil was actually found and how much was added or drawn in by the artist? Every time our students see a picture in a textbook, that's what they should be thinking, or they should raise their hand and ask that question. How much of the fossil was actually found and how much was drawn in by the artist? And they're going to find out not a lot of it was actually found. Okay, let's take an example from a textbook. For instance, modern whales are the descendants of 4-legged land animals. That's what we're told. Some fish grew legs, went up, became mammals on the land. Then one day a mammal decided it needed to go back into the ocean and went back in the ocean and they became whales. That's the story. And here's the proof right from a biology textbook. There's all the transitions. Would 4 transitions be enough to do this? No. It would take hundreds to thousands of transitions. Now, the question is, how much of those transitional pictures of the fossils were actually found and how much were drawn in by the artist? What it turns out is those are mostly all artistic drawings, not anything close to what was found. Let's take, for example, one of their famous ones, Cedar, candidate for whale evolution. There's the book, Science. I wrote the words artist reconstruction in there for purpose. That's Cedar, on its way to becoming a whale. This is what they found. Only the shaded portions of the skull is all that was found originally. No other part of the body was found. Just the shaded portions. But you know what happened when they found the rest of the fossil that went with it? This is what the skeleton looks like. Now, we don't know what color fur it had and how long it was, but we do find enough of the skeleton to reconstruct the entire creature. Folks, that is not a whale. That's a land-dwelling creature. Nowhere close to what they were showing in the textbooks. That's why we call this deception. That's why you can clearly see evolution should not be equated to science. Here's another famous one. Nebraska man. Anybody know where we found Nebraska man? Nebraska. See how easy anthropology is? This is an easy subject. Nebraska man. Now, they found a lot of evidence for Nebraska man, so much they were able to reconstruct the entire creature Nebraska man, his wife, his family, and the environment they lived in. And that made a big splash. Here's the headlines. Nebraska ape man of the Western world. News press right there. How much of the fossil did they actually find? A tooth. That's all that was found was a tooth. And from that tooth, they reconstructed the entire creature and family. That's evolutionism, folks, not science. Piltdown man. Now, this creature lasted for almost 50 years in the public education system as the fact of evolution. There it is. Darwin theory is proved true from the newspapers. What did they find? The whole thing was a forgery. They had a segment of a human skull and part of an ape jawbone and some teeth. And the teeth had file marks on them to make them fit. And bones were chemically stained to make them appear old. And this was being taught as the fact of evolution for almost 50 years in the public education system. This is not science, this is evolutionism. How about this one? National Geographic, 1999. Proof that dinosaurs evolved into birds. There it is on the cover of National Geographic. The feathered dinosaur. Archaeoraptor. Well, dinosaur birdling smashed in fossil flap was the headlines a little over a year later. What had happened was somebody pasted on feather imprints onto the fossil. The whole thing was a fraud. But yet, that was being taught as evolutionism, which is not science. Let's do another one here. Fossil imagination, I call this. Discovered in 1983, Ida, dated to be 47 million years old. I wouldn't trust those dates, but 95% intact. Newspaper headlines, fossil Ida, extraordinary find is missing link in human evolution, May 2009. Wow, another great find, verifying we evolved. Well, 100 days after the great announcement, it was considered to be another great blunder. All Ida was an extinct lemur. Another major blunder. See, if you believe in evolution, your imagination will see evolution. That's exactly what's happening, folks. I'm hoping you're starting to understand what's happening to our youth out there. You can bring them to church 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, but you send them to the public education system, folks, they're going to win. You're going to lose unless you start training your children. You're going to lose. Fossil imagination. How much of the fossil was actually found and how much was drawn in by the artist? How about the 3 critical thinking questions? How do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? And the 2 key words in the power question? Observational and faith. Yeah. See, as educators, we have to do that review now and then because you never know when I'm going to sneak in a final exam. So let's do a quiz. Ready for one more quiz? This will be the last quiz, I think. Notice I said I think, so this is real fuzzy. Quiz. Now, the rules are 100% or you fail. That's the rule in this quiz. Okay, on the left there is a picture of a fossil turtle. On the right is a picture of a living turtle. What does a fossil turtle look like? Turtle. Did that surprise anybody? The turtles have always looked like turtles. There's some fossil imprints of spiders. Pretty easily recognizable that these were spiders, not some other kind of creature. On the left there, according to the evolutionist, is a 400-million-year-old fossil starfish. What does a 400-million-year-old starfish fossil look like? Starfish. Pretty dumb creature. 400 million years, never grew legs and walked out of the ocean, did it? According to the evolutionists, on the left there is a fossil of a 40-million-year-old bat. And guess what it looks like? A living bat today. No change. Fossil crabs look like crabs today. Fossil shrimp still look like cocktails. Dragonflies, fossil dragonflies, no change. Fossil horseshoe crabs, no change. Fossil seahorses, no change. Fossil frogs, no change. Was there any evolution there at all? Well, let's go a little further. According to evolutionists, on the left there is a fossil 100-million-year-old alligator. 100-million-year-old alligator. Looks like alligators today. No change. Coelacanth fish. There's a 100-million-year-old fossil coelacanth fish. We were told by the evolutionists they've been extinct for 70 million years. 70 million years they've been extinct, we were told. And according to the fossil record, what the evolutionists saw was this creature was evolving into an amphibian. It was growing legs. Well, guess what they found still living in the early 1900s? Coelacanth fishes. They were not extinct for 70 million years. They're still living today. Guess what they look like? Fish, no legs. Complete misinterpretation. If they're doing this many times, folks, why would you ever trust them on anything in the fossil record? There's the tuatara lizard. These are the ones they love to use in dinosaur movies. No change in 200 million years. Now, I don't believe that time at all. But according to evolutionists, they've been around for 200 million years, no change. Scorpions, no change in 360 million years. They didn't like you then, they won't like you now. Jellyfish, no change in 500 million years. Where is the evolution in the fossil record? It's only in their imagination, pictures drawn by artists in our textbooks. Now, if evolution was true, let's talk about it. If evolution was really, really true, what should we find out there? We should find some amazing transitions out there. For instance, anybody seen the gator bird? We haven't even found that one in Florida yet. How about the bunny cat? Don't find that one either. How about the rhino melon in your garden? Watch out when you pick those watermelons. How about the bird dog? Sounds like a song. Anybody remember that song? Who sang it? Everly Brothers. Sparrow boxer. How'd you like that one to have your own finger when you're walking around there? Or the improved polar bear. Count the legs. We can do a lot of things with computers when you have idle time. Now this one is a real creature. We have found this one. Know where we find them? In churches. Watch out where you go swimming. Little cat shark. Or how about a face only a mother could love? How'd you like to take one of those home with you? Now, those aren't real creatures. But if evolution is true, we should find some really transitional creatures, but we don't. The only way we get transitional creatures is we hire artists to draw them. Now, let's bring it to the last key points here. The fossil record. We've already seen it doesn't look good for evolutionists, and it's only going to get worse. When I'm approached by an evolutionist to talk about the fossil record, it doesn't matter what they talk about, I'm taking them down to the Cambrian layers there, the bottom layers. The Precambrian and Cambrian layers. If you can't remember those two terms, Precambrian and Cambrian, just say bottom layers. We like to keep things simple. Why it's so important down there? Well, we find that those bottom layers, the Precambrian and Cambrian layers, are fossils of single cells. Yes, we find fossils of single cells. Then we find fossils of very complex creatures, like trilobites that have a very complex eye mechanism. Jellyfish, seashells, even some fish we find down there. What we're not finding down there is transitional creatures. We go from single cells to very highly designed complex creatures with no transitions. Almost every body shape or phyla appears in those bottom layers with no transitions. Folks, that right there is enough to verify what the Bible teaches and completely refutes the evolutionism story. In other words, the whole foundation for the fossil record for evolution is not there, does not support evolution. That's why I always take it down to here. Until you can show me the transitions for the bottom and bottom layers, Precambrian and Cambrian, then everything you're telling me is based on faith. Doesn't matter about this fossil you're talking about over here, that's one you're talking about over here. Your bottom layers, your foundation is based on faith. And that's all they can come up with. Until they can find the hundreds to thousands of transitions needed down there, it is a faith issue, not science. Jonathan Sarfati, PhD in physical chemistry, he's our chess player that Chris was talking about, made this statement. The Cambrian explosion is a mystery for evolutionists. They can't find the transitions. John Aston, PhD, professor of biomedical sciences. The sudden appearance of fully formed species in the fossil record without apparent evolutionary ancestors and mutant intermediate species is a major problem for evolutionists. R.K. Barnes, Peter Calloway, PhD. The Invertebrate, a New Synthesis textbook. Most of the animal phyla that are represented in the fossil record first appear fully formed in the Cambrian. The fossil record is therefore of no help with respect to the origin and early diversification of various animal phyla. It's over right there, folks. The fossil record is not evolution. We own it. It confirms what the Bible teaches. Everything was created after its kind. Now, another great one I like to use is fossil graveyards. Evolutionists have a tough time with this one. Fossil graveyards found throughout the entire world. And the key here is, what we're finding are graveyards of hundreds to sometimes thousands of creatures all buried together. And where we find them, they're buried in sediments laid down by water. Sounds like a flood of some kind. Let's take a look at one. Here's one in Nebraska. 9,000 animals. What kind of creatures? Rhinos, horses, camels, wild boars, plants, trees, seashells, fish. Folks, they don't all live in the same ecological zones. They live in different areas. How did they all get washed together there? Sounds like a flood, not long, slow processes. Because see, in order to become a fossil, to have the potential to become fossil, you must be buried rapidly to keep the oxygen out and keep the scavengers away. Or you don't have potential to become a fossil. So these had to be buried rapidly. And apparently they were buried in a flood. Here's one in Wyoming. 483 dinosaurs over a 7-mile-long area, buried in sediments laid down by water. That's a very large flood to bury 483 dinosaurs instantly. Here's one in Utah. Over 12,000 bones belonging to at least 73 individual dinosaurs. Siberia and Alaska, graveyard of bears, wolf, fox, jaguars, and many other kinds of creatures, all buried and mangled together in sediments laid down by water. Dinosaur National Monument, Utah, 1,600 individualized bones from 11 different species of dinosaurs, all buried together. Grand Canyon, a mile above sea level, we found billions, that's with a B, billions of nautiloid creatures. Now, these nautiloids do not live on the land. They live in the bottoms of the oceans. How did they get a mile above sea level? Oh, right. Here's how it happened. You're going to get these explanations in the schools. The continents sank and they came back up. And they sank and they came back up. And that's how it happened. Did anybody ever observe that? No, it's just a story, isn't it? Incidentally, the sediments the continents are made of are very buoyant. They won't sink. So it's what you call the big bluff. 7-foot thick layer, billions of these creatures all buried. Sounds like a large flood. France, hundreds of thousands of marine creatures buried with other kinds of creatures, including reptiles. Wyoming, Green River Formation, thousands and thousands of creatures, alligators, birds, turtles, mammals, and many varieties of insects all buried together. Chile, a whale graveyard, 20 of the whales completely intact, their skeletons. Very rapid burial in sediments laid down by water. So when we look at this, when we're told the fossil record proves evolutionism, that is a false statement. False statement. So final analysis, what we've looked at. 3 critical thinking questions. How do you know it's true? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? The power question. Show me any observational evidence for evolution that does not require me to use faith. We had the fuzzy words and magic words. We had the quiz, no change in the fossils. Cambrian explosion, no transitions. Then we had the fossil graveyards. So I have 2 questions for you now. Who's going to train the next generation, and what are they going to believe? Do you know right now the world is out-educating the church? Vastly out-educating the church? Do you want your children and grandchildren to grow up and have a secular worldview or a biblical worldview? In other words, are you concerned enough about your children and your grandchildren where they're going to spend eternity? The world wants them. Did you know about 70% of our youth are leaving the church today? 3 different independent studies all have come up with about 70% are leaving the church. Why? They do not have confidence in the Bible. I am talking about Christian youth who have been going to Sunday school 12 years. Do not have confidence in the Bible. What does that tell you about Christian education in the church? Something's not happening. Youth groups. I love to talk to youth pastors. I have one question I generally ask them. And I've traveled all over the country. I've only had about 2 youth pastors give me the correct answer to this one question. The question I'd like to ask them is this. If this was your first year teaching a youth group, what would you want your students to know or be able to do at the end of their first year of teaching? I get all kinds of answers, very seldom the correct one. See, the correct answer is this. You want your youth to be able to know, to be able to share, and to be able to defend the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the number one thing they should be taught. Not just hear it, but can they do it? And that's not happening in our youth groups around the country today. You see, the reason we're in church is called the Great Commission. And we're not doing that today, most churches. But I'll also let you know, I'm not laying all the blame on the church, because who's the number one teacher in a child's life? It's the parents. We've got to do our job. We've got to make sure we know this information. That's why CAPS brings the resources there to help you out. That's why I have all these video streaming to help you out. What we do at Creation Training Initiative, and that's the ministry we are, CTI, we offer one-day training classes to get you fully equipped. I won't say fully equipped, but help get you equipped. We have a basic creation training class, a one-day class, 8:30 to 5:30. You'll be pretty equipped when you get done to be able to refute evolutionism. We charge you $45 for that class. What do you get? Well, you get a full day's training, you get a 100-page manual, and we feed you lunch. We don't make a whole lot off of this. Matter of fact, we don't make much of anything because we pay for our own travel and all our expenses on this. And we go anywhere in the country to do these, and even around the world. So there's a basic class for teens and above. Then we have a one-day advanced apologetics class, one day. In there you're going to learn to answer questions like, how can you call God good when he allows evil to go on? Give me any evidence for the existence of God. Presuppositional apologetics. That's for high school and above. Then we have a class just for teachers. How should we be teaching? What methodology should we be using? Certainly not the one you've learned in most of the education colleges, because this course was written on how did Jesus teach, the greatest teacher of all time. How to measure your success as a teacher, right from the Bible. What is your job description as a teacher, right from the Bible. So very different type of course. Then we just started a brand new one called the Christian Educators Conference. It's a one-day class. This class specifically helps you learn what you need to know and some of what you're going to have to be able to teach about creation in your schools or Sunday schools or your students at home. Starts off with what is Christian education? Teaching critical thinking skills, just what we went through here today. Teaching about the origin of life. What do you need to know to teach about the origin of life? How to teach about creation and time. How to teach about the fossil record. And it goes on and on. How to teach about moral relativism that's being taught and used in the public education system. So this one prepares you how to teach specifically creation, evolution, and moral relativism. We will be offering this course May the 20th up in Arlington. May 20th this year. That'll be out of Heinz Lama Apologetics Forum. So keep an eye on this one. Then, if you're interested, we have a brochure out there. We have a one-page brochure. We're coming out with a 4-page brochure. You can find a lot about this on our website. We offer a very elite 5-day training class. If you're serious on this, this is the class you need to take. It's called our Creation Apologetics Teachers College. We only offer this once a year, and we only take 60 students from around the country. This is not a class where you come for fluff. We don't do fluff. Marines don't do fluff. And we don't provide entertainment. Well, you might have a little bit there, but most of your entertainment's at night when you're dreaming. You're in class 10 hours a day, studying at night. You'll do a couple of presentations. We'll grade you on them. You'll do a defense presentation. We'll grade you on and take a final exam. This is our 4th year coming up to do this. We have a success rate of 100%. I do not tolerate failure in education. I only educate for success. So we come together as a team and everybody will succeed. That's the only way I like to train. I've been in education for about 45 years. Ran Microsoft's worldwide technical training, U.S. Sprint's worldwide technical training. Was an educator in the Marine Corps. I've taught middle school and high school, college, doctorate level, Northwest Graduate School of the Ministry. What it basically says, I learned a lot of things that didn't work very well. But I did learn some things that do work. And I found most of those right there in the Bible. How did Jesus teach? So if you want to pick up a brochure back there, go to our website. We have detailed outlines of all the course, all the topics we're going to cover in that class. This year it will be held at Glorieta, New Mexico, just outside Santa Fe. They have a wonderful conference center there. You go there, you get private room, private bath for each individual, 3 good meals a day, and a lot of great teaching. There's 3 of us that co-teach this course. One of the persons that teaches is a New Testament Greek scholar. That's the caliber you're going to get in that class. Another one, he's a pastor. He's a top debater and has written books on presuppositional apologetics. Then you have to put it with me. So look at that class. We only do it once a year. This year it will be August 14th through the 19th, Glorieta, New Mexico. We have an electronic newsletter. Keep tabs on what we're doing, some of the new things we're doing out there with our ministry, Creation Training Initiative. You can sign up for that. And then here's what we're doing at Creation Training Initiative. Our mission is to equip the next generation to believe, trust, and defend God's word. We want a teacher in every Christian school, in every church that can teach the truth about God's creation. And we're doing this, we're starting this in Boise. We're making great head ground in Boise, trying to make it the Creation Education Center for the country. So that's what we do at Creation Training Initiative. If you'd like to help us out, we know we're fighting a big Goliath. We know we're outnumbered. We're outfinanced by millions and millions of dollars. If you'd like to help us, and we have cards back there you can pick up. And technically what we're doing is training missionaries to help train this next generation. Not everybody's meant to be a teacher, but parents, you're all teachers because you teach your children. So that's how you can get a hold of us. If you want to get a hold of me personally, I can give you my card, gives you my direct cell number and direct email. That's also back there. So if you have any questions, I'm going to bring Chris back up. Then if you think of any questions, we'll have some time for that. If you don't have any questions, I'll ask the questions.
All right, thank you, Mike. You guys thank Mike for there. We appreciate you. We're going to open it up for a time of question and answers. But before we do that, we're going to take up a brief offering. We're responsible. We specifically invited Mike Riddle here to do this program, but we've partnered with a couple of other churches in the area to have him speak there as well. But nonetheless, to do these kind of programs, to invite these kind of speakers to come and do these programs, we are responsible for covering their expenses. So we have our own accounts set up here at Cedar Park, and so any of the monies taken up here this evening are going to Cedar Park. They are earmarked and used specifically to fund this program. So help us out as much as you can. Make out checks to Cedar Park. Use the envelopes if you need to. But I'm going to offer up a word of prayer for the offering, and then we'll pass the plates. Father, we thank you so much for Mike Riddle again, Father, and for his ministry. We just ask blessings upon him and what he's trying to do here to equip the saints, to equip the believers, to be able to defend the truth of God's word, Father. Father, we ask for wisdom to help us be better witnesses for you, Father, to understand how these scientific findings should be interpreted, to understand all the science behind it, and be better witnesses for you, Father. We ask for wisdom. Father, we just ask your blessings on the offering that's taken up today and the betterment of Cedar Park Ministries and for the continuation of this specific program. In Christ's name we ask all things. Amen. Okay, so Mike's going to take some question and answers. Just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic around. We got a good 10 minutes. We can take a few questions before other classes let out. Any questions? Mike is a rare opportunity to have someone as well versed as Mike is.
I'll ask a question. Did Adam have a belly button? Did Adam have a belly button? Well, what is a belly button? Leftover scar being attached to umbilical cord. Adam wasn't attached to umbilical cord. Did he have a belly button? We don't know. Because there's things that attach we only see from the outside. From the inside, there are things to it that do attach to that area. So we don't know. Trick question.
We actually have a book back there with that exact same title. Okay. Does Adam have a belly button? That answers those kinds of variety of questions.
I thank you. I've heard of a fossil of a finger called Lucy's finger. Have you heard of that? Where they tried to establish a connection between apes and man based on just a finger?
First of all, anybody here named Lucy? Before I start talking? No, Lucy is considered our ancestor. A little over 2 million years ago is when she's supposed to have lived, stood about 3.5 feet tall. They found about 40% of the fossil. That's what they estimate, about 40% of the fossil. The fingers they really didn't get too much on. They didn't find any of the feet. But what we know, now Lucy is what we call a type of Australopithecine. The only reason I said that because I can pronounce the word and it makes me look like I know something. Australopithecine. Australo means southern, pithecine, ape-like creature. So we find these fossils in the southern parts of Africa, so they're named Australopithecine. I found out 40%. There was some estimation they found parts of it 40, about a couple miles away. That was only in hearsay. We don't have that documentation anywhere. What we did find was all the Australopithecines have long curved fingers like apes. Their toes, their feet are identical to apes with the great toe sticking out like our thumb does. Our great toe doesn't do that. I don't think it does it? It could be a good candidate. The foreheads are shaped down like this versus straight up and down like us. The pelvic bone showed it could not walk upright as its main form of locomotion. There wasn't anything there to show it was human. Everything but we found about Lucy shows it was an extinct ape-like creature. But in the textbooks, you know what they draw? White eyes. Only humans have white eyes. We didn't find any eyeballs. The head, forehead to chin is almost straight up and down. They reshape the pelvic bone to make it look up like this versus like this, and to make the feet look human. That is 100% fraud. That's not science. If evolution has to do that, then how can you call it science? So I don't know about the finger. I haven't heard anything on the finger, but even the inner ear canal has now shown with the studies that it could not walk upright as its main form of locomotion. So just another ape.
I have a question. I noticed that a lot of the evolutionists, they give as an argument, when you see something and it looks real, they say it's a delusion, and then they say it's counterintuitive. So you have comments about that?
Yes, what they're generally talking about there is design. And what they're saying, it's only the appearance of design, but not really designed. So next time you cross the 520 bridge, just remember it's only the appearance it was designed. It wasn't really designed by anybody. So in other words, what they are is a complete denial. Anything we see out there that's really complex had a design. Computers have design, cars have design, bridges have designs, buildings have designs. And they're not even close to what a single cell is in complexity. So how can you say that cell happened by random chance processes when it's more complex than any computer system we've ever designed in this world? So they're in denial of that. It's just another bluff is what it is. And I call them on it. How do you know it's not designed? Give me an explanation for how it all got there without any designer. And you only have random chance processes to do this. You can go through the mathematics and the number of trials it would take, and it won't happen in 1 trillion years. So I just called their bluff. How do you know it was not designed when we look at it, it's more complex than anything we've ever done in our buildings? I would just use that on them. How do you know? Call them on their words, on their statement. You'll find out you don't have to answer a single question a lot of times. Who did that in the Bible? Anybody do that when he was challenged with a question? He turned it around and said, well, let me ask you a question. If you can't answer mine, I'm not going to answer yours. Jesus did, yes. What a model. Now, you don't want to do that all the time.
So I have a question about, the definition of evolution, because I've read Darwin's Origin of Species, and he talks about evolution as just like why there are so many kinds of animals and why there are extinct animals. So, but in the presentation, you talk about, how life came to be life
Yes.
in general. So did that change? Like, when did that change?
Okay, what is the definition of evolution? Read the Origin of Species. Did it put you to sleep? It was wasn't an exciting book anyway. Yeah. Anyway, the definition of evolution, I find out, I haven't found a correct definition of evolution in a single biology textbook in the country yet. Not one. Because they all leave it so wide open you can call anything evolution. One of the common ones, evolution is change over time. Folks, in science, definitions must be clear and precise and say exactly what's in that domain and what is not in that domain. We don't do that much in our definitions anymore. So you have to get back to what is the definition of a definition so you can get started. But what is evolution? What would be a good definition? Well, number one, it's got to have a mutation, a random mutation. Can't be a program mutation. Now, there's a difference. Mutation in medical dictionaries is a change in the DNA. That's what it's called. Well, Darwin didn't know anything about that, but that's okay. We'll forgive him on that one. It's a change in the DNA. Some of these changes are actually programmed, like in E. coli. They'll have two genes that code for the same thing, just slightly different, but they'll switch back and forth. That's a program. It's nothing new. It's just programmed to do that. But a random mutation, it's got to be a random mutation. It's got to add some benefit. It's got to add new genetic information, which has never been observed. You got to survive, and you got to be able to reproduce. Those are the 5 attributes right there. They really have what we call Darwinian evolution, where one creature has the possibility of changing into a brand new creature. I don't see that in any textbooks. It just change over time, or they just add a few more fuzzy words into it. But evolution is supposed to be an upward progression, not a downward. And then they confuse it with terminology, microevolution and macroevolution. We do not like to use the word microevolution because it confuses people. Microevolution has nothing to do with evolution. What it is genetic variability within kind. We have that pre-programmed into us to be able to vary within kind, but not become a new kind. So Charles Darwin, he had a very loose kind of idea of what evolution was, very loose, because he didn't understand what the cell was or anything inside the cell. So he had to make some wild, and I'll give him credit for that. He didn't know anything about that. But he didn't understand what we're talking about, evolution, from one creature to a brand new kind of creature, such as a dinosaur to a bird or an ape-like creature to a human. That's Darwinian evolution. Different varieties of birds is not evolution. Different varieties of dogs is not evolution. That's genetic variability that's already programmed into them. Real evolution requires the addition of new functional genetic information, which hasn't happened by any means we know of. So Darwin had a very loose definition, and our biology textbooks don't give a very good definition either. Does that answer what you're looking for? Okay.
Mr. Riddle, thank you for coming. I've heard you speak before, and I appreciate what you do. I teach first grade, and I have a student who's just fascinated by dinosaurs, and he would tell me all the things that he reads about, for instance, how they died millions of years before people arrived. And according to the Genesis account, that would not be true because a death didn't come till after sin. So what I want to ask is, how would you encourage educators such as myself to go about addressing these things with students? For instance, should I focus more on studying about dinosaurs from a creation perspective, or focus more on why the Bible is true, or a bit of both?
First of all, I want to thank you for teaching the first graders. First through sixth grade are my scariest audiences. They're more scary than NASA scientists to me. You never know what they're going to say. But now, to answer your question, is it a private school or a public school?
Here, private school.
Private school, okay. You have all the leeway then. I would start with the death before sin issue. If dinosaurs lived that long ago and died out before man was here, what was happening before man was here? Death, decay, and disease. And then I would go to Genesis 1:31. What would have God called that? Very good? Did God call dead things very good? Now, from there, I just present those two things. Now I would go to the fascinating part that's going to really fascinate them. Guess what we're finding in these dinosaur bones? We're finding bones that are not fossilized yet. We're finding soft tissue. We're finding proteins. We're finding DNA. We're finding red blood cells. That can't last very long. You can give an explanation that proteins start breaking down as soon as something dies. So does DNA. DNA has a half-life about 521 years. So after several thousand years, there's not much left there to show. We're finding, and I wouldn't go into the carbon-14, well, not for first graders. Carbon-14, sixth graders, I would go into that. They could understand what you have to tell them. But we own dinosaurs. The evolutionists don't. Matter of fact, in my dating, when I talk about dating methods, dinosaurs refute the whole radiometric dating scheme. Everything. There's the whole idea of billions of years is dead because of what we found in the dinosaurs. The soft tissue, the red blood cells, the proteins, DNA. It's a killer. Because if they dated them at 65 million years ago and they have to be fairly new, that means their whole dating process is wrong, isn't it? And where they find how they dated is the sediments they find in. It means their whole geologic column has just been dismissed right then and there. That's what I use dinosaurs for. So I would do that. I would start with the Bible. I always like to start with the Bible, the gospel. What does the gospel mean? I start with John 3:16. Everybody knows John 3:16? I've only been in one church where nobody knew it, and they never invited me back. Then I go to John 3:17. That's critical to understand the gospel. God did not send his son here to do what? Who's got to condemn the world, but that we might be saved. That word saved, what does that mean? That's the word I focus on. What does that word saved mean? Something's not right. We got to be saved from something. Where do we find that out? Go back to Genesis. That's where you get, see, that's the way I teach the gospel. John 3:16, John 17. This is what we need to be teaching in the church, the full gospel. That's what we need to teach our youth, the full gospel. Without that full gospel, we don't understand the importance of Genesis. But the gospel, the whole gospel depends on those first 3 chapters of Genesis. Without it, we can't explain the gospel message at all. So you must understand, fully understand the bad news so you can understand and appreciate the good news. That's the gospel. So I would make sure the gospel was gotten in there. And then you go back to the Genesis 1:1. He created all things. His creation was perfect. Now let's see, did you know what we're finding verifies exactly that? Talk about what we're finding in the fossils. You probably already done that. I should have had you teach me. Any other questions?
Last call. All right, thanks a bunch, Mike. We appreciate you.
Thank you for coming out.
Let me just remind you real briefly what's coming up. So Mike is speaking tomorrow at Woodin Valley Baptist Church. That's here in Bothell. Different topic.
How big is God?
How big is God? Speaking Friday, both times 7 p.m. Friday, Edgewood Bible Church down in Edgewood.
Did God create evil?
Did God create evil? And then he's doing a Saturday luncheon in Mazatlan, Dr. Johnson. Is that correct? You can talk to Dr. Johnson afterwards if you want to get some information about a luncheon on Saturday. What's the topic of that going to be, Mike?
Are apes and humans cousins? That's what we're going to talk about, mutations and natural selection, and it's over right there.
Then again, I'm teaching in here next week on the Big Bang. Pastor Featon is in here the 3rd and the 4th Wednesday. And if you've not, if you're familiar with Pastor Featon and how excellent his sermons are, these Wednesday programs are like, normal Sunday sermon on steroids. To give Pastor Featon an hour and a half to teach, what better opportunity is that? So definitely want to come out and get some teaching for Pastor Featon, 3rd and 4th Wednesday. Next next month, first Wednesday in February, got Mark Champneys coming and teaching us about Mormonism and the Book of Mormon and all the problems with that. And then the month after that, we got Jonathan Sarfati coming from Creation Ministries International. So also very excellent. Sign up for the email list back there if you want to learn about these programs as they're announced. Check on the book tables on your way out. There's still some coffee in the back. Mike, would you close us out in a word of prayer?
Yes. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness, the power, and the glory, the victory and the majesty. For all that is in heaven and earth is yours. Yours is the kingdom, O Lord, and you are exalted as head over all. Both riches and honor come from you, and you reign over all. In your hand is power and might. In your hand is to make great and give strength to all. Now therefore, our God, we thank you and we praise your glorious name. Amen.